It's Friday, the 20th of May. Good morning, Europe. Great to have you with us. These are your top stories.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken accuses Russia of weaponizing food as Moscow insists sanctions must be reviewed if it is to open Ukraine's Black Sea ports. Drought across Europe sparks fears amongst farmers as they look towards their summer production while factoring in the cost of war in Ukraine. And Russian state media shows what it says are Ukrainian soldiers from Mariupol being treated in a Donetsk hospital as it continues to shell non-military infrastructure.
Russian state TV has shown what it says are images of wounded Ukrainian soldiers from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol being treated in a hospital in the Donetsk region. Moscow said on Thursday that just over 1,700 Ukrainian troops have surrendered since Monday. The Defence Ministry said some were taken to a former penal colony in territory controlled by Russian-backed separatists, while others were taken to hospital. Journalists working on the ground in the region have not been able to verify the claims. As far as the fighting is concerned, the main Russian offensive continues in the east, where it's reported that Moscow is gaining ground, albeit metre by metre, as resistance continues. Despite the Kremlin's claim that Russia doesn't target civilians, it's still shelling non-military infrastructure. A grain warehouse around 50 kilometres southeast of the city of Zaporizhia has been attacked, one of several such targets in recent weeks in different parts of Ukraine. In Kharkiv in the northeast, a Russian missile struck a water station that Ukrainian authorities say supplies a nearby hospital and buildings in the area. No casualties were reported. But the city is attempting to return to some semblance of normality after Ukrainian troops pushed back the Russians to the border. After 3 months, the metro in the country's second city will reopen next week. It's been serving as a bomb shelter since the invasion started.
Russia has made it clear that the Black Sea ports will remain blocked unless sanctions against the country over the war in Ukraine are lifted. This is impossible according to the sanctioners. However, the tug-of-war between Russia and Ukraine's allies is leaving tons of grain to rot in these ports, which could lead to starvation in the four corners of the world.
The numbers have escalated in terms of those marching to starvation, from 80 million to 135 before COVID, and then because of COVID, 135 to 276 million people marching to starvation. And that number, because of the Ukrainian crisis, will rise to 323 million at least. Truly, failure to open those ports in Odessa region will be a declaration of war on global food security, and it will result in famine and destabilization and mass migration around the world.
The US accuses Russia of using hunger as a weapon.
Nope. The decision to weaponize food is Moscow's, and Moscow's alone. Don't take my word for it. Even Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, former Russian president, recently said that Russia's agricultural products were, and I quote, its quiet weapon, end quote.
Meanwhile, on Thursday, the Senate overwhelmingly gave the green light to a new aid package for Ukraine worth $40 billion, some 37.8 billion euros.
Well, the EU's Foreign Policy Chief, Josep Borrell, is meeting with Filippo Grandi, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, here in Brussels today, alongside development ministers from across the EU, to discuss the ongoing food crisis that's evolving out of the Russian occupation and war in Ukraine. We know that important grains as well as fertilizers are not being exported from Ukraine around the world. This could tip millions of people into a situation of famine, mass starvation, malnutrition, which could last many years. Now, the UN has said it's had ongoing contacts with the Russian government, with the Russian military, to try to resolve the issue, but has not been successful so far. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
handshakes and laughter at the White House as US President Joe Biden met the leaders of Sweden and Finland. The meeting took place just 24 hours after both countries requested to join NATO, breaking a tradition of neutrality that dates back to the Cold War.
Sweden and Finland have strong democratic institutions, strong militaries, and strong and transparent economies, and a strong moral sense of what is right. They meet every NATO requirement, and then some.
Turkey could be one of the country's main obstacles to join the bloc. Ankara is reluctant to accept Sweden and Finland's membership because of their perceived support of Kurdish activists and organizations it considers terrorists.
When an ally, an important ally as Turkey, raises security concerns, raises issues, then of course the only way to deal with that is to sit down and find ways to find a common ground and an agreement on how to move forward.
Stoltenberg also believes dialogue will remove any roadblocks in the way of Finland and Sweden joining the bloc. And the Secretary General believes negotiations can be completed ahead of the NATO summit in Madrid at the end of June.
This is certainly a significant policy for Twitter when it comes to dealing with false claims about the war in Ukraine. With this new global misinformation policy, the social media platform is trying to focus on the false rumours that are spread during times of crisis. This can be, for example, armed conflicts like Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It can include public health emergencies like the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as large-scale natural disasters, such as last year's deadly floods in Western Europe. It is during these times of crises that misinformation can spread very easily because people are hungry for facts, but this provides fertile ground for false claims to spread, potentially undermining public trust and leading to real-world harm. Well, with this new policy, Twitter says that they understand the critical need for credible and authoritative information during times of crises. When misinformation is identified on Twitter by journalists or humanitarian groups, they will no longer be recommended or amplified to users. You won't see these kind of tweets in your search, home, or explore functions. And what's more, the platform says it will also make it a priority to add labels like this one to any verified or high-profile government accounts that are sharing false claims about the war. You will be able to see why these tweets are false, but you won't be able to like, share, or retweet them. And what's more, the head of safety and integrity at Twitter, Joel Roth, he has said, Helena, that he wants to expand this new misinformation policy, not just relating to the war in Ukraine, but also to potential future humanitarian crises around the globe.
The story of a young Senegalese man captured in his village in 1917 to serve alongside the French in World War I has opened the Cannes Film Festival in the Certain Regard category. Jireyas features Omar Sy, star of the Netflix series Lupin, as his father, who also enlists in order to watch over his son. The film, also known as Father and Soldier, is shot with a handheld camera and shows the horror of war for these men and thousands of African fighters who were torn from their native country to fight on the front line in a cold and unknown region under the French uniform. According to the festival's director Thierry Frémaux, the film arrived late in the selection, but it conquered the public on its opening night. Beyond the horror of war, the film puts the tormented relationship of a father and his son at the centre of the film. The father who just wants to bring his boy home alive, and the son who has been galvanised by military ambition and threatens to escape him. The film is also an opportunity to remind us that according to various sources, at least 30,000 African fighters died for France on the battlefields during the First World War.